The courtroom had its usual morning rhythm, papers shuffling, nervous whispers, the low hum of people waiting for their turn, until the door opened and everything simply paused. A small girl stepped inside, one hand hovering uncertainly in the air while the other gripped the harness of a golden retriever who guided her forward with slow, careful steps. She didn't rush, didn't look around, didn't search for seats the way most defendants do. She just listened to the echo of her own steps, the shifting bodies around her, the quiet breathing of her dog who moved as if he understood the weight she carried. Her glasses hid her eyes completely, but you could feel her discomfort from the doorway. She held herself tightly, chin low, shoulders tense, every muscle trying to take up as little space as possible. A couple of people stopped talking. Others straightened in their seats, confusion fading into sympathy. And then Judge Caprio, who had been reviewing a file, lifted his head with the kind of instinctive gentleness he reserved for moments that felt fragile. His expression softened instantly. Without raising his voice, he said, "Take your time, young lady." The girl paused at the center of the aisle, exhaling a shaky breath she'd been holding far too long. Her dog nudged her knee, as if reminding her she wasn't alone. She whispered something only he could hear, a tiny reassurance meant for him, not the room. That small moment, just a girl steadying herself through the presence of a loyal companion, hit the courtroom with a quiet emotional force. Even before she reached the podium, it was clear this wasn't going to be an ordinary case. She reached the podium slowly, each step measured, guided by the gentle pressure of her dog's movements. When she stopped, her free hand hovered in the air for a moment, searching for something stable. Judge Caprio noticed immediately and said, "A little to your left, yes, right there." Her fingers brushed the wooden edge, and she let out a quiet breath of relief, almost imperceptible, but heavy with tension. The courtroom microphones picked up her first attempt to speak, a tiny sound, more air than voice, before she cleared her throat and tried again. "Good morning," she whispered, barely audible. People leaned forward without even realizing it, drawn in by the fragility of her tone. Her dog sat pressed against her leg, tail resting still, eyes fixed upward with an alertness that made it feel like he was ready to take on the entire world for her. She tightened her grip on the harness, the knuckles of her small hand turning pale. Judge Caprio didn't rush her. He never did with children, but with her, there was an extra layer of patience, like he understood immediately that this moment was overwhelming. "Would you like to tell me your name?" he asked gently. She swallowed hard, her shoulders rising with the breath she drew in to steady herself. My name is Maya," she said. The microphone caught the slight tremble in her voice, a tremble she tried to hide by lowering her chin further. A soft murmur moved through the gallery, not mockery, not impatience, but empathy. Caprio gave a slow nod even though she couldn't see it. "Well, Maya, thank you for being here today," he said, his tone warm enough to take the edge off the room's tension. "And who is this helper at your side?" She reached down to touch the dog's head, her fingers brushing through his fur like she was drawing courage from the softness. "This is Beacon," she said. He helps me get around." Her voice cracked on the last words, just slightly. Beacon looked up at her as if to say, "I'm here." And in that moment, the courtroom no longer felt like a place of judgment, it felt like a place where something deeper, something human, was about to unfold. Judge Caprio glanced down at the citation in front of him, then back toward the girl whose hands were now folded tightly together on the podium. "Maya," he said softly, "you're here for a jaywalking violation." The words seemed simple enough, but the effect on her was immediate. Her shoulders tensed, her breath caught, and Beacon lifted his head as if sensing a shift inside her. She nodded once, almost mechanically, and whispered, "I know." The judge tilted his head gently. "Do you want to explain what happened that day?" he asked, not pressing, just opening a door. Maya didn't step through it. Not yet. Her jaw tightened, and she leaned slightly back, instinctively distancing herself from the attention. I just crossed the street," she said, her voice clipped, guarded. "I shouldn't have." "I know." The quickness of her answer, The tone of someone trying to end the conversation before it begins didn't escape Caprio. She wasn't being rude, she was defending herself from something invisible but very real. Beacon nudged her leg again, and she exhaled through her nose in a shaky burst, her hand dropping to stroke his head for stability. Judge Caprio's voice came slower this time, more careful. "Take your time. We're not in a hurry here." But Maya shook her head, a small, frustrated motion. "It's nothing," she insisted. "It's just. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. It's not important." Her words tried to sound strong, but there was a tremor beneath them, something she was trying desperately to hide. The gallery noticed. The judge noticed. Even Beacon noticed, shifting his body closer until his side pressed fully against her leg, grounding her. Caprio leaned back in his chair, studying her with the kind of patience that invites the truth without demanding it. "Sometimes," he said gently, "the smallest things tell us the biggest stories." Maya clenched her fingers together so tightly her hands trembled, and for the first time since she entered, she looked as though she might break, or finally speak. Maya's breath wavered as though the judge's calm words pressed against a door she'd held shut for too long. Her fingers curled into Beacon's fur, and the dog responded by leaning his whole weight into her, silent, steady, a living anchor. She lifted her face only slightly, not enough for anyone to see her eyes behind the glasses, but enough to show she was trying to gather herself. "I don't like talking about it," she murmured, voice thin. Judge Caprio didn't interrupt. He simply waited, hands folded, creating space instead of pressure. The courtroom stayed still, as if the air itself knew pushing her would make her retreat deeper. After a long pause, she inhaled shakily. "I didn't always need him," she said, lightly touching Beacon's harness. "A few months ago, I could see everything. Colors. Streets. Faces." Her voice went soft on that last word. "Then it just changed. Fast." Someone in the gallery shifted, the emotional weight settling on everyone like a quiet fog. Maya kept her chin down. "I'm still learning. Some days are okay. Some days, everything feels too loud. Too big." Beacon nudged her hand again, a small reminder of safety. "That day," she continued, "I misjudged the sound of traffic. I thought the cars were stopping. I thought I was doing it right." Her lips pressed together in frustration. "But I wasn't." She shook her head as if blaming herself for something far beyond her control. "I shouldn't have been out alone. My cane broke the day before. I didn't want to bother anyone. I thought I could handle it." The tremor in her voice made it clear she didn't fully believe that. Caprio leaned forward slightly, voice low, warm. "You were doing your best," he said, and the reassurance seemed to hit her harder than any criticism would have. Her shoulders loosened by a fraction, and for the first time since she entered, she allowed herself to breathe without rushing to hide the vulnerability underneath. Judge Caprio let her words settle, giving them the respect they deserved. Maya kept her hand on Beacon's head, her fingers tightening and loosening in a slow, anxious rhythm. The dog didn't move, he simply stayed pressed against her leg, breathing calmly, as if reminding her she was still here, still safe. Caprio glanced again at the citation, then back to the girl who was fighting to stay composed. "Maya," he said softly, "you didn't put anyone in danger. You didn't harm anyone. You weren't reckless. You were trying to navigate a world that changed on you." She shook her head quickly, cutting him off before the comfort could settle. "People stared at me," she whispered. "They acted like I was slowing everything down. Someone honked, really loud. I panicked. I stepped off the curb and—" She stopped, her breath catching. The courtroom leaned in without meaning to. Her hands slid from Beacon's head to his collar, gripping as if she needed something solid to keep her voice from breaking. "When the officer stopped me, I felt stupid," she continued, her tone small but tight. "Like I should have known better. Like I should have been stronger." The last word trembled. Caprio's voice came slow, firm in its gentleness. "Strength isn't pretending nothing is hard," he said. Strength is standing here right now, telling me the truth. Maya didn't respond. She didn't nod or speak or lift her head. But her shoulders sank, just a little, as if the armor she'd been holding on to all morning loosened under the weight of someone finally understanding her. Beacon shifted again, placing his paw lightly on her shoe. A tiny gesture, barely noticeable, but enough to draw a faint, shaky breath from her, one that carried the first hint that the walls guarding her might not last much longer. Judge Caprio rested his hands on the bench, his voice steady but threaded with warmth. Maya, I want to understand something, he said. When the officer approached you, what did you feel in that moment? The question wasn't an interrogation, it was an invitation. But even so, Maya stiffened as if bracing for impact. Her fingers curled tightly around Beacon's harness, twisting the fabric. She opened her mouth once, closed it, then tried again. I felt embarrassed, she said. The word came out small, brittle. Everyone stopped. I could hear them whispering. I didn't know which direction the voice was coming from. I didn't know if the officer was talking to me or someone else. I just froze. She swallowed, the knot in her throat nearly audible through the microphone. I hate freezing, she whispered. It makes me feel like I'm useless. Beacon pressed closer, his shoulder against her knee, and she steadied herself with a shaky breath. Caprio nodded slowly, compassion softening every feature of his face. You are not useless, he said, not as a judge, but as a human being speaking to someone who needed the words. You're adapting to a new reality. That takes courage. Maya's chin trembled, not enough to draw gasps, but enough for the gallery to see the struggle behind her stillness. I didn't want anyone to help me, she continued. Not because I don't need it, but because, every time someone does, it reminds me of what I lost. The room grew quieter still. Caprio leaned forward, voice gentle but grounded. Needing help doesn't make you weak, he said. It makes you human. Maya's breath shook. Her hand dropped from the harness and rested lightly on Beacon's head, the simple touch grounding her. For the first time, she didn't pull her emotions back behind a wall. She just stood there, exposed but not alone, as if realizing this courtroom might be the safest place she's been in months. Maya stood silently for a moment, breathing into her nose as if collecting all the pieces of herself before they slipped again. Beacon shifted his stance, leaning his warm body against her leg, sensing that the storm inside her wasn't over. Judge Caprio waited, not with impatience, but with the same calm presence he used with people twice her age who carried half her burden. Maya, he said, his tone measured. When you say it reminds you of what you lost, what does that mean for you? The room froze with her. She lifted her chin only a fraction, just enough to show the conflict running through her. It means, she said, each word slow and strained. I used to be able to walk anywhere without thinking. I used to run, cross streets, read signs, look people in the eyes. Now everything is guessing. She clenched her fists. I have to memorize sounds, count steps, wait for things that used to be automatic. Every mistake feels like a spotlight telling everyone I'm different. Her breath tightened. And I hate being different. A murmur of sympathy rippled through the room, but Caprio kept his eyes on her, steady, kind, unwavering. Being different, he replied softly, is not the same as being less. Maya's lower lip quivered, and she immediately pressed it flat, trying to hide it. People don't see it that way, she whispered. They see a girl who can't cross the street without a dog. Beacon nudged her hand, making her fingertips land on his fur. She exhaled sharply, almost like an apology to him. He's helping me learn the world again, she said. But some days, I feel like the world moved on and I'm still standing in the same place. Her voice thinned. That day with the officer, it wasn't the ticket. It was the reminder. Caprio's expression deepened with understanding. Reminders can be painful, he said, but they can also show us how far we've come. Maya didn't speak, but the way her shoulders loosened, just a little, showed the words had reached a place she tried very hard to protect. Maya's fingers remained buried in Beacon's fur, the only visible sign of her trembling courage. She lifted her face just enough to let the courtroom's soft morning light hit her glasses, though her eyes remained hidden. I try to be brave," she said, voice almost breaking. "But most days it's exhausting. People don't see the effort behind it. They see a girl walking with a dog and think she's fine. They don't see the hours I spend learning sounds, counting steps, memorizing streets." Her shoulders hunched further as she exhaled, releasing the weight of unspoken months. Caprio's gaze didn't waver. He leaned slightly forward, his voice steady and calm. "Maya, you're showing courage right now. Not just standing here, but speaking. That is bravery most people never understand." The words seemed to press against her armor. She glanced down at Beacon, whose ears twitched slightly, as if sensing the shift in her energy. "Sometimes," she whispered, "I want to disappear, to be invisible so nobody notices my mistakes." The courtroom felt still, every eye locked on the small figure who carried such immense vulnerability. Caprio's tone softened even more. "It's natural to want that, but hiding isn't the same as healing. You're learning, Maya, and every step counts." Her hand gripped the harness tighter, feeling the strength and warmth of Beacon beneath her. A small sigh escaped her lips, quiet, almost imperceptible, but it carried a weight lifted, a tension eased. For the first time, she didn't push her emotions entirely away. She simply let them exist, knowing she wasn't alone. Beacon pressed closer, and she whispered, almost to herself, "I can do this, with him." Judge Caprio's face softened into a gentle smile, the kind that radiates trust and safety, and the room felt lighter, not because the case was resolved, but because humanity had quietly claimed its space in the courtroom. Judge Caprio folded his hands on the bench, letting the silence stretch for a moment so Maya could gather herself. "Maya," he said softly, "you've carried a lot already. I want to know something. What helped you keep going through all this?" She hesitated, her fingers brushing the dog's fur almost absent-mindedly. The gallery watched her, the weight of expectation pressing gently but palpably against her small frame. After a pause, she whispered, "Beacon, he makes me feel safe. Every time I think I might fall, he's there. I don't have to see to know he's watching out for me." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, and she swallowed hard. Caprio nodded knowingly. "It sounds like you two have a bond most people would envy," he said, voice calm and gentle. "He's not just helping you walk. He's helping you face the world again." She squeezed the harness tightly, eyes hidden but chin lifted slightly as if the words had reached a place that needed to hear them. "Some days," she murmured, "I still feel scared. The sounds, the noises, people rushing past. I feel lost even when I'm standing still." Her dog nudged her leg lightly, a silent reminder that she wasn't truly lost. The courtroom was unusually still, the weight of her honesty settling like a soft fog over every listener. Caprio leaned forward, voice just above a whisper. "Being afraid doesn't make you weak. Facing it, even a little at a time, shows the strength you carry inside." Maya exhaled, shoulders loosening, allowing herself a brief moment of relief. Beacon rested his head against her thigh, and she whispered, almost to herself, "We can do this." The quiet bond between girl and dog, paired with the judge's fatherly patience, shifted the energy in the room, proof that courage often shows up in the smallest, simplest acts. Maya's voice grew steadier, though the tremor lingered, as if every word cost her effort she had been saving for months. "I wasn't always like this," she said softly, fingers still resting on Beacon's warm fur. "Before I lost my sight, I could go anywhere. I could see the streets, the signs, the people. Now, everything is different. Every step feels like a question I don't know the answer to." She pressed her lips together, trying to stop the quiet tremble. Caprio's gaze remained calm and unwavering, giving her permission to continue without judgment. "The officer that day, he didn't yell. He just stopped me. But the sound of his voice, and the cars honking, it hit me like I wasn't ready. I panicked." Her hand tightened on the harness. Beacon nudged her leg, urging her forward in the emotional storm she was braving. "I thought I could handle it on my own, But I couldn't. I still can't sometimes. The courtroom hung on every word, the atmosphere thick with quiet empathy. Caprio leaned slightly forward, voice gentle but firm. Maya, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's stepping forward even when you feel afraid. Her shoulders lowered just a fraction, the tension in her posture easing, as though the words had carved a small space of safety around her. I try every day, she whispered, to remember I'm still me. But the world keeps reminding me I'm not. Beacon placed his head against her ankle, his warm breath grounding her. Judge Caprio nodded slowly, softening the room with a presence that felt like a steady hand on her shoulder. She was not alone. Maya's words hung in the air as the courtroom waited, every eye drawn to the small figure standing with quiet determination. Beacon pressed closer, sensing the fragile moment unfolding. I pretend I'm okay, she admitted softly, so people don't worry. But some days, I just want to disappear. To not have to explain or be careful or be watched all the time. Her voice quivered just enough for everyone to feel the weight behind it. Judge Caprio leaned forward, his tone calm and steady, radiating the kind of understanding only he could convey. Maya, hiding your struggles doesn't make them disappear. And it certainly doesn't take away the strength you've shown just by standing here today. She swallowed hard, taking a breath that shuddered with relief and tension at the same time. I'm tired, she whispered, but I can't stop. I don't want to stop. Sometimes it's too much. Beacon nudged her hand again, his warm presence a quiet anchor in a world that felt overwhelming. Caprio's gentle words continued to flow. It's okay to feel tired. Feeling overwhelmed doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And it shows that even when things are hard, you're still moving forward. Her chin lifted slightly, the smallest gesture of trust. The gallery sat silently, moved by the authenticity of her confession, and the quiet loyalty of the dog at her side. For a moment, the courtroom wasn't a place of judgment. It was a space where courage was measured not by perfection, but by the willingness to stand, speak, and allow oneself to be vulnerable. Beacon leaned his head against her ankle, and Maya's hand rested on him, grounding herself in the quiet reassurance that she didn't have to face this alone. Judge Caprio let the room breathe with her, giving her the space to continue at her own pace. Maya's fingers traced lightly along Beacon's harness, a small but deliberate gesture of comfort as she searched for the right words. Sometimes people tell me I'm inspiring, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I don't feel inspiring at all. I feel ordinary, like I'm just surviving. The courtroom shifted. Even the murmurs of the gallery faded into a respectful silence. Caprio's eyes softened behind his glasses, and he leaned slightly forward, speaking slowly and with measured care. Maya, true inspiration isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's the quiet courage of facing each day when it feels impossible. She exhaled shakily, letting the words sink in. I try to do everything right, she continued, but every day I make mistakes, even small ones. I stumble, I misjudge, I get scared. People see the dog helping me and think that's all I need, but it's not. Beacon nudged her hand gently, reassuring her without words. I want to be strong for him too, she admitted, because he trusts me to lead, even though I'm learning every step of the way. Caprio nodded, his voice warm and unwavering. Strength isn't about never needing help. Strength is about acknowledging that you do, and still moving forward. Maya's shoulders relaxed slightly for the first time in the courtroom, and she pressed her hand against Beacon's fur, grounding herself in the simple, undeniable truth: she wasn't alone, and her courage was enough. Maya paused, the quiet tension of the courtroom wrapping around her like a thick blanket. Beacon shifted, resting his head lightly against her knee, a living anchor for her swirling thoughts. I miss seeing, she whispered, voice trembling just slightly. I miss colors. Faces. Reading expressions. I can't tell who's smiling or frowning. I have to guess everything now. Her hand traced the dog's harness in small, repetitive motions, seeking reassurance in the familiar warmth. Caprio's tone softened, carrying the gentle authority of someone who understood that listening can sometimes heal more than speaking. "Maya, what you've lost is real," he said. "It's not imaginary, it's not small. But losing something doesn't mean losing yourself." She let out a shaky breath, fingers tightening around Beacon's fur. "Every day I try to remember who I am," she admitted, "but the world keeps reminding me I'm different. People stare. They act like I'm fragile or helpless." Her voice wavered, almost cracking on the last word. The dog pressed closer, sensing the tremor in her small body. Judge Caprio leaned forward, calm and steady, voice carrying warmth and authority together. "Maya, being different doesn't make you less. It makes you human. And it makes the courage you show every day extraordinary." Her lips pressed together, and for the first time in hours, her shoulders softened, a hint of release in her stance. The gallery, quiet and attentive, felt the weight of her honesty, and in that shared silence, Maya discovered a small but profound relief. She could be vulnerable, and it was enough. Maya swallowed hard, her hand resting firmly on Beacon as if drawing courage from the simple presence of her companion. "Before I lost my sight," she murmured, voice soft and hesitant, "I loved to draw. I used to spend hours sketching streets, people, sunsets. It was my way of understanding the world." She paused, the words hanging between her and the judge, fragile yet full of meaning. Beacon pressed closer, sensing the emotion, offering silent comfort. "No," she continued, "I haven't touched a pencil in months. I feel like I've lost that part of myself." Her voice wavered as if admitting it aloud made the loss more real. Judge Caprio's eyes softened, reflecting the quiet understanding of someone who had seen countless lives unfold in his courtroom. "Maya," he said gently, "losing one way of seeing the world doesn't mean the world has disappeared. It only changes how you experience it. And your art, your creativity, it's still a part of you." She pressed her lips together, a tear escaping unbidden, and traced the dog's fur with her fingertips. "It's hard to imagine I'll ever draw again," she whispered. Caprio leaned in slightly, his calm voice carrying both authority and compassion. "Sometimes the smallest steps, relearning, adapting, bring us back to what we thought we'd lost. And you've already taken the first steps." Beacon nudged her leg gently, and she exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of her own words lift slightly. For the first time, the possibility of reconnecting with herself, even in a new way, felt tangible. The courtroom remained hushed, witnesses and gallery alike absorbing the quiet resilience of a girl learning to navigate her world anew. Maya's gaze remained lowered behind her glasses, but her voice carried a fragile strength as she continued. "I'm learning, slowly. Every day I walk with Beacon, every street, every corner, every sound, it's a lesson. Some days I feel like I'm failing. Some days I feel like I'm making progress." Her hand squeezed the harness lightly, grounding herself in the dog's unwavering presence. The courtroom stayed quiet, absorbing the honesty that carried both vulnerability and courage. Judge Caprio leaned forward slightly, his calm, fatherly gaze never leaving her face. "Maya, each step you take, even the ones that feel uncertain, is proof of your determination. It's proof that you refuse to let fear dictate your life." She exhaled shakily, pressing her hand harder against Beacon's fur. "I don't always know if I'm brave," she whispered, "but I try. And I try again." Caprio nodded gently, his voice steady. "Trying, Maya, is bravery. Not the absence of fear, but facing it anyway." She closed her eyes briefly, drawing a long, trembling breath, letting the words settle into the spaces she had kept closed. Beacon nudged her leg, reminding her that she wasn't alone, that each step forward was witnessed and supported. The gallery remained silent, every person struck by the humility and raw courage of a girl navigating a world that had changed so drastically in mere months. In that quiet space, Maya allowed herself to feel something she hadn't admitted before, that she could survive, and even thrive, with patience, persistence, and the steadfast support of a loyal companion. The courtroom had become not a place of judgment, but a space where resilience could quietly shine. Judge Caprio's voice softened even more as he leaned forward, careful not to overwhelm Maya with too much attention. Maya, he said gently, what you've gone through isn't easy. Most people would give up, hide, or stay silent. But you've come here and faced it. That's remarkable. She pressed her hand harder against Beacon's harness, the dog sensing the subtle shift in her tension. I just want to be normal, she admitted softly, voice cracking slightly. I want to cross the street without thinking twice, to go anywhere without planning every step. But some days I feel trapped in a world I can't fully see. Caprio nodded, his tone measured, like a steady hand guiding someone through rough waters. Normal is relative, he said. Your normal now is learning, adapting, surviving. And in that you are extraordinary. Maya exhaled, a small, shaky sound that carried relief. She pressed her forehead briefly against Beacon's shoulder, drawing comfort from his warmth. I try every day, she whispered, to remember that. To believe it. Her lips trembled, the tiniest quiver betraying months of hidden fear and frustration. The courtroom, normally filled with murmurs and subtle movements, was utterly still, absorbed in the quiet courage of a girl who refused to let her limitations define her. Caprio's eyes softened further, his words gentle but firm. You are not defined by what you've lost, Maya. You are defined by what you keep doing despite it. Beacon pressed his head against her hand, grounding her, and she allowed herself a faint, almost imperceptible smile. In that moment, strength wasn't loud, it was quiet, steady, and real. Maya straightened slightly, her fingers still tracing Beacon's harness as she drew a deep, steadying breath. I sometimes feel invisible, she admitted softly. Like no one really sees me. People notice the dog, or the fact I need help, but they don't see me. Her voice wavered, the words heavy with months of hidden isolation. Beacon nudged her hand, reminding her that at least one being truly understood her. Judge Caprio's gaze remained calm, warm, unwavering. Maya, he said gently, you may feel invisible to some, but you're not invisible here. Every word you speak, every step you take matters. Courage doesn't need an audience to exist. She pressed her lips together, shoulders tensing briefly, then relaxing a fraction under the weight of his words. I want to be brave, she whispered, but I also want to be seen as just me. Not the blind girl, not the one with the dog. Just Maya. The gallery remained silent, absorbing the quiet honesty of a child who carried more resilience than many adults. Caprio leaned forward, his voice steady but tender. Being seen for who you are takes time. But the effort, the truth you share, that's what makes people notice the heart, not the circumstance. Beacon rested his head lightly on her knee, and she pressed her hand against him, feeling the warmth and the reassurance. Slowly, Maya lifted her chin, a hint of determination in her posture. For the first time that morning, she seemed less like a fragile figure in the courtroom and more like someone beginning to reclaim her space in the world, quietly, courageously, one step at a time. Maya's voice grew firmer, though still soft, carrying the quiet weight of someone who had lived through months of fear and uncertainty. I think I'm learning, she said, fingers still pressed lightly on Beacon's harness. Learning that mistakes don't make me weak. That asking for help doesn't make me less. That some days I'll fall, and some days I'll get it right. And both are okay. The courtroom remained hushed, every person leaning into the honesty of her confession. Caprio nodded slowly, his expression patient and reassuring. Maya, that's the essence of courage. It's not perfection. It's persistence. It's showing up even when it's hard. And that you do, every day. She swallowed, letting the words sink in, and her shoulders relaxed another fraction, the tension in her small frame easing. Beacon shifted closer, resting his head against her leg, a constant reminder of her support system. I still get scared, she admitted, voice trembling just slightly. But I try not to let it control me. I try to remember that I can do things, even if I can't do everything the same way as before. Caprio's gaze softened further, his voice calm, warm, fatherly. The world may have changed around you, Maya, but you're adapting. And in adapting, you're teaching everyone here a lesson about resilience, courage, and heart. She exhaled slowly, feeling the quiet shift within herself. For the first time, she didn't just survive in the courtroom, she belonged there. Beacon nudged her hand gently, and she squeezed it back, a small, steady connection grounding her as she prepared to face the world beyond those walls. Maya's voice softened further, almost to a whisper, but each word carried the weight of her journey. I used to think that if I couldn't do everything like everyone else, I wasn't enough, she admitted, fingers brushing Beacon's fur with a tentative rhythm. But I'm starting to see, that's not true. I'm enough. I have to believe that, for him and for me. The courtroom stayed silent, the gallery leaning in without realizing it, drawn to the quiet courage of a girl who carried so much yet stood so firmly. Judge Caprio's gaze remained steady, filled with a fatherly patience that gave her permission to speak and be heard. Maya, he said softly, the strength you show, the honesty you share, and the courage to be here today, these are the things that make a difference. Not for a grade, not for approval, but for yourself. Beacon nudged her hand once, a subtle reassurance, and she pressed back against him, drawing strength from his steady presence. I'm learning that every small step counts, she said, voice gaining just a fraction of confidence. That even when I stumble, it doesn't mean I've failed. It just means I keep moving. Caprio's smile was gentle, almost imperceptible, but it carried warmth that wrapped around her like a soft blanket. Exactly, Maya. Every step forward is proof of your courage. Every effort you make is seen. And every day you continue is a victory in itself. She exhaled, feeling the tension in her shoulders loosen further, her connection with Beacon steadying her, and in that quiet space, the courtroom felt less like a place of judgment and more like a place where a small, determined heart could shine with authentic, unshakable courage. Maya took a slow, deliberate breath, her fingers still resting on Beacon's harness. For the first time that morning, her chin lifted fully, and though her eyes remained behind dark glasses, there was a quiet light in her expression. I think I understand now, she whispered, voice steadying. That being brave doesn't mean I have to do it all alone. That it's okay to lean on others, and still be strong. That even when I can't see everything, I can still move forward with courage. Beacon nudged her hand gently, his warm head pressed against her leg, a silent affirmation of her words. Judge Caprio's voice, calm and fatherly, filled the courtroom with a gentle finality. Maya, you've taught everyone here an important lesson today. Strength comes in many forms. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's visible, and sometimes it comes from allowing yourself to be seen. A faint, almost imperceptible smile crossed Maya's lips as the gallery sat in stunned silence, moved by the honesty and resilience of this small girl with a big heart. Then, as she prepared to leave the podium, she spoke one last sentence, her voice soft but resolute. I'm not invisible. I'm learning to walk my world, and I'm not afraid anymore. The courtroom, filled with ordinary people witnessing an extraordinary moment, felt a collective shift, one where judgment melted into empathy, where vulnerability became strength, and where a small blind girl with a loyal dog redefined courage for everyone present. Beacon wagged his tail once, and in that single motion, it felt like the quiet triumph of human spirit had been celebrated without words, leaving Judge Caprio and the entire room deeply moved and silently inspired.